Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is our eighth module for the cognitive workshop here that we are now going to go into part two of what we started last week for emotional regulation and metacognition. So, again, as a disclaimer, the opinions voiced in this workshop are that of the host and not of Providence St. Jude Medical Center. There is any information that is provided here is not to be constituted as medical advice. So please consult with a primary care physician for any medical care or treatment. And then as well as confidentiality. So confidentiality, while not mandated, is would be appreciated and highly encouraged if we could keep all of the information shared here within this virtual room. If there's any information that's shared that makes me reasonable or anyone reasonable suspicious that abuse of a child, dependent adult, or older adult is occurring, I must break confidentiality in those circumstances. And so, as a reminder, these morning sessions are being recorded and will become available on our YouTube channel and via email as soon as possible. There is an afternoon session where there will not be recorded and will be a little bit longer to facilitate discussion. So if you're more comfortable in attending that session, you can as well. Um, and as note in the recording will only include the presenter mode, so no one's video will be shared and your voice will only be recorded if you speak. So otherwise, please use the chat raise function at the bottom of your screen to chat with other participants. Okay, perfect. Good morning. So module 8, and here we are picking up where we left off last week, the emotion cycle, right? And how the emotion cycle is essentially, it is the traditional brain CBT framework is like there is an antecedent, there's a behavior, and there's a consequence, right? So that the sort of linear idea there. And so the emotion cycle expands on that and says, well, the emotion is triggered by something, and an emotion is also tied to a sensation, like a physical sensation we're talking about, right? So if you're having persisting symptoms after head or brain injury, this may be an important area here to consider, right? So the sensations piece, right? There may be headaches there that are associated with an emotion. There may be, like we're talking a lot about headaches, there may be neck pain or cervical neck pain that may also be associated with some emotion. And that might be triggered as well. Emotions are also associated with behaviors and thoughts, and all of these things affect each other in a very reciprocal way. And so, part of our homework this past week was to use and create an emotional cycle. So, we introduced triggers and sensations last week. We'll be completing that by doing behaviors and thoughts this week, and then really talking about emotions, right? So if you've done your homework, just love it, just do it as long as you did your best, right? And then you can add to it, change to it as we kind of go through and finish the cycle today. And then at the end of today, we're gonna have a portion where we'll stop the recording, and then so that way we can more freely have a discussion regarding each other's emotional cycles. So perfect. First is our thoughts, right? So we're triggers, there are sensations, physical sensations, and now there are thoughts and behaviors is what we're going to be talking about today. So thoughts, these are our processes, right? With your thoughts, with your opinions, what's the self-talk that's happening, right, in the background, right? Are you nice to yourself? Is your self-talk appreciative? Is your self-talk encouraging, or is your self-talk defeating? Is your self-talk mean? Is your self-talk discouraging, right? And so all of those, our judgments, our interpretations of those are all part of our thoughts, also including our memories, right? And part of our memories are what our expectations are based on what of our past memories or past experience. So our thoughts, right? So again, here's the meta list of metacognitive strategies again, right? So how can we become aware of our thoughts? Right? We can become aware through a number of these metacognitive strategies, right? You question yourself, you set plans, you goal set, you monitor, right? You reflect, right? You regulate yourself by adjusting your thought processes. You're making connections like, oh, that's okay, so that's why that person was mean to me, because it turns out that other person was just in a car accident, or was just fired from what a job, right? Or and so making those connections between all of the different interactions that you're making, right? There's a big um unifying thread across everything in the environment, right? And so and then part of that is restructuring or reframing, right? Like, oh man, instead of, oh, I sucked today, like, oh well, I didn't get all of it done, but I got this done, and that's an important first step. So I got these things done, and so that was successful. So really reframing and restructuring the way that another way to say cognitive restructuring is to what we were saying the other week, is broadening your expectations, right? There are other things that you've done that are successful and that we can build on, right? And so that's the most important thing. And then thinking out loud, visual aids, whatever you do, post-its on the wall, dry erase markers on the mirror, whatever you need to do, hanging your door on the door, hanging your bag on the front doorknob so you don't forget it, right? Those are the things, the automatic places. Hang your key on the your keys on the key ring by the door, right? Put your wallet and cell phone in a decorative bowl by your bedstand, for example, right? Those are the things that can adjust the thoughts, so that way we can better understand how we're feeling and how we can better regulate our processes. So thoughts, Berta, what's a example of a self-talk that's happening in your head right now?
Well, with the thoughts, thinking um, what you had just said about, um, I kind of forgot, but what you had just said about the thoughts, positive self thoughts, instead
Right.
of beating myself up about things, complimenting myself on the positive thoughts,
Yeah.
and reframing thoughts, where I used to think negative about things, just saying, asking myself, is that thought true? No, it's not. It's a cognitive distortion. What can I say to myself that next time?
Yeah. Right. Perfect. Right, exactly. And so like, what are you thinking? The cognitive distortions, right? Like sometimes the things that we're saying to ourselves aren't, they're not logical. I mean, they're just either emotion based, they may be based on some distorted thinking, right? Lack of evidence, right?
Yeah,
It
there's
feels.
supposed to be like 10 cognitive distortions, in Feeling Good, Feeling Great by Dr. David Burns.
Mhm. Yeah, good. Like feeling good, feeling great, right? The distortions. So
Mhm.
here's a list of them. Here are 11, right? And so Berta,
Oh, you
the
got them.
list changes, right? So here are the basic ones, right? Um Polarized thinking, right? Black and white thinking is also another one.
Right,
It's all
right.
good or it's all bad.
Or overgeneralization. You always say that. You always do that.
Yeah, yeah. You always do that, right? And then one negative thing must meet, everything is gonna be bad, right?
Right.
And then another thing you were sharing earlier was mental filter, right? It's very common, especially when we're in pain, either physical or emotional pain, that the only things that are focused on, because it's easy to focus on, are the negative things. Oh
Right.
man, I should have done this, I should have done that. And like using should have statements is another one. And then
Yeah. Somebody told me when I was in the hospital, they say, don't shoulda me.
don't should have
Don't
me.
shoulda me. So
That's right.
that
That's
was a new saying I picked up for, don't shoulda me.
right. Right, right, right. And for you, Rosie, how has your university labs been this week?
Um, it's been last weekend coming up on Wednesday. We're gonna be doing when you compare a human DNA sample compared to a virus infecting, it looks different.
Right.
The molecules completely different. So when you have an infected patient, you want to see all human, but if there's something else in there, you get it out. So we're trying to find a compound. We put it in there, gets the bad stuff out. It's called foreign stuff in science, foreigners out particles. But it's
Mhm.
like so we're trying to like make a molecular formula
Yeah.
that it can just eject it through bonding, take it out.
Oh, and take it out, right? And so these are the things that you were used to doing beforehand, yes?
Yeah, before my injury, it's like I got some of it long term, but I need to, it's called practice. Do it again. I want it in my short term recall. So down the line, when I go into paid lab work again, I can just do it on the spot.
That's right. Right. And
That's
so
awesome.
and so as you're getting the experience to pull
Do
it
it
out
with
of the
my hand.
long term, what are some thoughts that like what are the thoughts or the talk that you're telling yourself when you're having a difficult time?
Um, I'm focused on my goals. Like,
Right.
if I got, like I did something in the lab that my PI
Uh-huh.
tells me do that next week or bring it over to the girl who enters the data. Come if I do it, towards my goal, it's like accomplishment. If you give yourself a feeling, accomplishment, it's like a good mindset. I did it.
Right.
Just think I did it.
That's right. That's right.
Wonderful.
That's right, man. Right there. Right there. Clap on that. Absolutely. Yeah. We got hands up, hands in the air for you there, Rosie. Right. Love that. Right. Because then really what you're not disqualifying the positive. You are actually qualifying the
I'm
positive.
doing it again.
I'm centering myself. I'm centering my thoughts. I'm centering my actions around my goal,
Yeah,
right?
goal
Being
oriented.
goal
Yeah.
directed. Ah, yes, you beat me to it. Exactly right, Rosie. I love that. Man, I love that. And so part of being goal directed, right? That's goal directed behaviors
Yeah.
here, right? Goal directed behaviors. We have, the idea of what emotions are used for, right? They're using to make, as Rosie said, goal directed behavior to
Yeah.
make goal directed behavior. And so, behavior we are defining as any action that you take, right? And so these can be constructive, right? Like Rosie was just saying, I bring this to the girl who does the coding, or
Yeah.
yeah, who
The,
does
the girl who, if you get results, you just send it over to this girl, Lily, who enters it into the lab computer. So it's like if it's in there, the PI, the guy in charge, can reflect on it and send it out. So
all right, perfect, right? So like this is you're collecting this data, right?
yeah,
Collecting the DNA data, right? Collecting what is human, what
yeah,
is not human,
yeah. In
right?
the sample, you run the PCR in it. That looks human sequencer. What is
Uh,
that? Don't want to get it out.
that's exactly right, right? So, because then, as you're thinking, like the actions that you're taking, they're purposeful, right? They're
Yeah,
deliberate. This is human. This is not, right?
yeah,
And so, I'm doing these things. I'm collecting
Uh,
the data so it's productive, so I can bring it to the girl who does the coding
data.
of the data, right? So it's positive not only for you, but for Lily and for PI.
Yeah,
Right, perfect. Right. So you're able to regulate your emotions so that they don't get in the way of you doing constructive behavior.
yeah.
Love that, man. Love that, Rosie. Now, now there are non-constructive behaviors, right? Things that don't help you accomplish your goal, right? So let's say you were in the lab and you were trying to identify what's human DNA versus what's non-human DNA,
Yeah.
and you keep messing up, and
Or
then
you label it
yeah,
that looks like it, but looks like it in science, get
yeah,
it out. That you have to be exact. Data checks or toss it.
yeah. So then let's say if you were getting to a point where you were making mistakes, Rosie, like when you make a mistake, what do you do?
You have to have like a mindset of need to push it positive next time. If you try it, practice it again.
Yeah. What
Needs
can
to
I do
be
differently, right?
differently, then result in good manner. Yeah.
Perfect, right? So when things that are not constructive, you make a mistake, right? The only really non-constructive behavior is when you decide that I'm gonna give up. I'm not gonna do
Yeah.
it.
Like in a lab, you need to have your data, send it to PI and with the Lily on the computer. Then you just need to do it. In like
Perfect.
real life, either that or that. But in like out there in the real world, you have to be fluid with it too. So, but I love being in the lab. It's really regimented and scheduled. But real life, completely different subject. So,
Yeah, no, and I think you really hit up a great point there, Rosie, right? Following injury, following brain injury, it
yeah,
may be helpful to find routine, right? It
routine.
actually is helpful to get routine, right? And to focus and structure and supports so that way you can better prepare yourself to handle when the real world comes out, right? Because the real
Yeah.
world is messy.
Yeah, it's like, when you go over to a grocery store, you have your cart.
Uh-huh.
You want that box of pancake mix, but there's a lady right in front of it. You
Mhm.
have to just deal with it. Either ask her, I need to get that right there, or
Right?
some kind of,
Excuse
you're
me.
not supposed to push your cart to someone right there. You just have to do it.
Yeah, excuse me, right?
Hey,
So perfect,
excuse me, I
right?
want to get that.
Oh, excuse me, right? What are the things that are in the way of constructive behavior? So I love that, Rosie. Yeah,
Yeah.
Berta, you have something there?
Yes, I remember when I was doing work like Rosie, we didn't have a person to do the data entry and then someone to read the results. We had to do everything.
Yeah,
Herself. She had to do it.
yeah,
Yeah, it
right,
was like we stained the cells, drew the cells that we stained. Okay,
Yeah.
is this what the
Herself
normal
right
cell
there.
looks
Yeah.
like? Is this what the damaged cell looks like after dyeing it? Okay, then we got our results from the clinical analyzer and we put them in ourselves into the machine,
yeah,
into the data bank,
yeah,
to be analyzed by the clinical, you know, uh, person in charge, So
right.
it was interesting, though. I enjoyed what you were saying that they allocated different parts of the task to different people.
Yeah.
But it's like, nah, when I was working, we had to do it
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah. Hey, but that's exactly right. So I think that change is also a way we got to start thinking about how
I think
our
it's
actions are,
great
right?
because she gets to,
Checks
practice
and
each
balances.
part.
Yeah, and there's checks and balances, right?
Yeah.
So one process by one person is a lot of pressure, right? There's a lot
Yeah,
of
and leaves
margin
a
of
lot
error
of
there.
space open for mistakes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
mistakes on, if you're on the bench, if you tip that flask over, you have to restart.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
big
So
time.
exactly as we're talking here, right? So with behavior with the metacognitive strategies, we have
Yeah.
to monitor so that way, we can see how we're doing from bench to to electrophoresis to data
Yeah.
collection to analyzing, so that way it's not just one big check at the end and there's all this margin for error. You have to start
Yeah.
checking at all the steps, right? And the steps for our behaviors, these are things like, some of the behaviors that are helpful, right? Could be communicating to other people, right, about your thoughts and feelings, right? So someone in the afternoon session is very clear about their expectations. When I say this, I do not want this until I am done, right? So
Yeah.
the very clear with the expectations, right? Other ones could be listening to the other person, right? And so that's where you're listening to your PI, you're listening to Lily, right? You're walking away when that lady standing in front of the pancake box won't move, right?
Yeah.
So
Taking a
instead of
break.
telling her what you really think.
Yeah, because that's really only gonna get
Get
make them
out of the
mad,
way.
right? And then so coming up with a plan, right?
Yeah.
I don't know about for anyone else, but when I am feeling anxious about something, coming up with a plan makes me feel a lot better, right?
Right.
If this happens, I'm gonna do this. If that
Yeah.
happens, I'm gonna do this, right?
Like that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 thing.
Yeah, exactly, right? And so as we kind of talk about, right, is these non-constructive behaviors, right? These are, and of course, this list is not exhaustive, right? I think we can all come up with a whole bunch of other non-constructive behaviors, but one thing that we've been talking about with pacing, avoiding the boom bust, avoiding the
Yeah.
avoidance, right? It's saying withdrawal, staying home, being inactive, not talking to anyone. That's not constructive. Self-destructive, drug use, abusing alcohol, emotionally eating. Now, I remember after my injury, I gained like 80, 90 pounds up to one point
Whoa.
because I was just
Not
eating my
you.
feelings. Yeah, man, I was like
Balloon.
215 at my prime, right? But I mean that's exactly, and I'm not a tall person. I'm like 5'9". So I mean, like after the injury,
89
right?
pounds.
Huh?
89 pounds.
Yeah, I shot up to 215 pounds, 215. So
Wow, that's not bad for 5'9".
yeah, but I mean, I went from 140 to 215.
Oh,
Oh,
Yeah, it's not bad, but just
the
relative.
delta, the delta. So
Yeah, the
no,
delta,
I could
right?
see a wrestler being that, size.
Yeah, but I was at 140 out of the hospital, and then I shot up to 215. So, because really,
Wow.
I wasn't able to walk safely,
Exercise.
run, exercise safely, and so
Mm.
and then I had all these the cognitive issues and thinking, and so I had all these feelings about oh man, oh woe is me, and then I had a lot of feelings. I was depressed and anxious about everything, and so I ate everything. I just ate everything. Right?
I ate a lot too when
Yeah,
I was in the hospital and
yeah,
came out. I
yeah,
ate a lot.
yeah.
Was there anything, any nutrient that you craved? Any cravings?
Yeah, no, I craved whole milk because at the time I couldn't drink anything thin because of my throat muscles. So whole milk and rice. Those two
Oh,
things, right? If you want to gain
and rice will
35
do it.
pounds quick, right?
that's it right there.
Whole milk and rice, right? Oh yes, ma'am. Yes, I'm there.
I was wondering, well, number one, whole milk and rice, and then add a little butter and sugar, and that'll really do it for you, But
That sounds great.
anyway, I was just wondering, Daniel, do you feel that your when you became aware of the overeating and the weight gain and decided to change, do you think you changed your self-talk first and then it helped with the overeating, or do you think you changed your diet and exercise and then that helped with the self-talk, or was it just like can you remember?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think that's a really great question. And I think it was just a matter of like not the changes were small, right? So changes to my self-talk, so that way I could not be ashamed and motivated to at least do something a little bit different. And then once I started doing things different, I changed doing things different, then that sort of helped me change more thoughts a little bit more. Like, hey, you did that. Great job. You did that. You stood up, you didn't go there, or you took the exercise, and I love what you're doing, right? You're feeling great. And then they kind of went back and forth. And so it was really not one changed and then I did the other. It was one kind of change, and then they basically just were reflexive with each other. So
Thank you so much.
they kept playing back and forth. So while it would be great, right, to change one completely first, that would be fantastic. But then if you do that, you're going to be waiting a long time potentially.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question. I love that. Yeah, Berta.
Oh, you know what is helping me? Mooney, his food uniform. When he mentioned that, nutritionist that he received from Brain Sport,
Natalie.
he did the food uniform and it stopped him from having diabetes and losing weight. I started doing the food uniform.
Good.
And I actually kind of like it, I really do. And I have a picture of the body I want, but the food uniform is helping me with my diet. I'm not diabetic or anything like that, but it is helping me to get to the, shape that I want.
Yeah.
It's not really a weight goal because I'm not big or anything like that, but it's the shape that I want.
Thank you, Berta.
Yeah. Yeah. Pam, you were saying something?
Oh, no, I just wanted to thank Berta, and maybe I can look into that, because I really, how you've talked about negative and positive
Self-talk.
Changes in the brain.
Yeah.
I really have noticed, especially since my horse died, like I'm not as active and I'm eating more and I'm gaining weight and I'm turning into an apple instead of a, so I'm glad you mentioned that body shape, Berta. So I appreciate this piece of the conversation, and I'll stop now. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
You're
Both of
welcome,
you.
Pam.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
And, be encouraged. Pets are important. I found a social influencer on TikTok, and she has 20 pets, and she spends a lot of time devoting each week, one day to pets that have passed. So if you want that information, shoot me a text.
Yeah. I mean, that's huge, right? I mean, really what we're looking at there is finding ways to improve or enhance the amount of constructive behaviors in our week, while then also simultaneously decreasing the non-constructive behaviors in our week.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so the good thing is the more you fill your week with constructive behaviors, the less opportunity there is to do non-constructive behaviors. So some examples are things like the avoidance, right? The attack, the passive aggressive, the withdrawal, right? Those kinds of things. And so now we've talked about triggers, which are the events, which could be internal events, could also be external events that impact, that start this emotion cycle, right? Or there may be sensations that you feel, right? Maybe it's hot outside, maybe your vision's blurry, or your eyes aren't, your pupils aren't dilating, so you get light sensitivity, right? Sound sensitivity. There may be other things like maybe you're stressed, so like your shoulders are always shrugged, or you're breathing shallow, and so those sensations are making you feel tense. The thoughts could be, oh, okay, I'm feeling stressed, I'm anxious about this thing, I don't know what to expect, I don't know what's happening, I don't know where the pancake mix is, I don't know why this lady is not leaving, I don't know why, or like I miss my companion, or I'm having difficulties. I gained some weight. I can't do this. Is like maybe I should have to change my thoughts first before I change my behaviors. So those are all kinds of thoughts. And then the behaviors are those actionable steps, which can be constructive or non-constructive. And then all of that is going to influence some emotional experience in the center, right? And so what's really difficult at times is
I was-
emotions. Oh, yes, is that emotions can be really fleeting and really difficult to pinpoint, right? So I have here a emotion wheel, and so part of increasing awareness is enhancing your vocabulary, right? So maybe with an enhanced vocabulary to better describe the words of emotions, you might be able to better understand how you're feeling in the moment. And when you can better understand how you're feeling in the moment, you can better identify, well, this is exactly how I'm feeling in the moment. Then you're more equipped, better equipped to fill in these other sections, other factors here, knowing that the specific emotion that you feel, right? So with the strongest emotions here in the center, right, at the point, and then the more general out there in the outskirts, we can create this emotional wheel here, right? And then of course there are emotions in between all of these, right? So for a more comprehensive list, now still this is not fully comprehensive, right? This list is not exhaustive, but there are a good number of emotion words here, emotional terms that describe a fairly full spectrum of emotions, right? And so if you are needing assistance or would like to read through this list and have it with you, right? Maybe print it out, fold it up, put it in your journal so that way you have a tool to help you describe all of the black emotions, the white emotions, and all of the 40 plus shades of gray in between, right? Because then having better vocabulary to describe your experience will then help you overall understand what's happening in the moment, right? So download that full list. It's in the slides. And so now another way to think about your emotion is where it is in terms of intensity and valence, right? So valence is basically good or bad, right? And of course, all of the shades of gray in between. And then intensity is low to high, right? So let's say after you identify where your emotion is on intensity and valence, right, then we can start asking, well, do we want to change this, right? So first one is if I'm feeling lazy, right? For me, right, if I'm feeling lazy, typically I'm feeling low energy, right? I got some energy, but I'm it's not enough to get me up and going. But then when I'm feeling lazy, I also feel very unpleasant, right? And so do I want to change this? Yes. Like I want to be lazy and feel okay about it, right? So maybe if this was lazy, if I reframed it to resting, I could move it. Resting would be low energy, but on the pleasant side of this thing, right? So what about calm, right? If I'm feeling calm, it's pleasant, a little bit pleasant, little high energy, but it's really not a lot of energy, right? So we can see that it's low energy, low pleasant right here. Doubtful, right? So I'm feeling doubtful that I will have the skills to be able to do something about the issues in my life that are problematic, right? So here I'm very high energy because I'm anxious, and then it's very unpleasant right? When you feel doubtful about yourself. And then ultimately, here is another one, thrilled, right? So thrilled, I have high energy. It's very pleasant, right? So we can kind of see how all of these different things lay on this emotion wheel here, right? So let's see. So let's see, would Pam, so if we were to put an emotion here that's both pleasant but low energy, what would you put there? Or let's say, how are you feeling right now? Let's do that. Like what is your emotional experience right now, Pam?
Right now is more like well, I would say like I'm in a state of grief, so I may be low energy. It's actually maybe up a little bit higher energy, but unpleasant.
Mhm.
So
Right.
I would say maybe negative 2.5, maybe
Okay.
negative 3.
Yeah, okay, -3, right? So perfect. So you're in a state of grief, right? It's low energy, it's unpleasant. And so and this is an emotion that I'm wanting to change, or are you wanting to change it?
Yeah, I got a book called The Grief Recovery Handbook for Pets. So I did take some action and I'm reading that. And then, it gives some assignments. So uh, I I'm taking action and yeah.
Good. I love that, right? I mean, like, you are a shining example of regulating yourself, monitoring where I'm at. I'm feeling grief, I'm feeling unpleasant. And so now I'm regulating myself using those metacognitive strategies. I'm regulating to better understand that, to know that I need to do something active, right? Because I'm feeling grief, I'm feeling low energy, I'm feeling unpleasant. So I need to take some constructive action towards something productive. And that's that's great. I love that. The Grief for Pets workbook, right?
Yeah.
And so that way you can actively be proactive in the processing of your own grief.
Yeah.
Because then, I mean, you hear that, like, oh, there are stages of grief, right? The sadness, the anger, and then the
Bargaining and
yeah,
yeah,
bargaining, and eventually the acceptance, right?
acceptance.
So part of that is you could just naturally sit there and wait for kind of the natural process, if you will, of the grief to cycle through, or you can be constructive about it and proactive by taking the process in your own hands. And so I love that you had done that, Pam. So salute. Perfect. And so
I did think of the word for the uh happy, being having happy thoughts but low energy is kind of like I would call that serenity, maybe, like
yeah,
that's a good thing. And that's when I have more clarity too,
yeah,
when I'm in a positive state of mind, but not overly thrilled about it,
yeah.
or anyway. So I thank you for bringing this up. And
Yeah, I think that's actually a really great point, Pam. I because I think I'm the same way also. And of course, everyone's going to be a little bit different, but I think when on this valence axis, right, is if you are on this side of the valence axis, you think I do feel that I also too think more clearer. Like my decisions are clearer if I'm on this side of the valence than versus on this side, right? So then, right, even though I'm low energy with like serenity or peace or rest,
acceptance,
acceptance, right?
like even surrender, because then my mind's not so busy trying to figure things out or anything. And that's also when I have a connection with my higher power or my God, like my mind is quiet. I'm surrendered to the fact that, I'm powerless over anything really, other than my state of mind. And
man.
then that's when, I become more aware of the good things God's putting in front of me that I can move forward with in goodness,
Yeah, I
and
love
then
that.
that's when I can see my own strengths too and my own capabilities. So keeps me.
Because your thought process is clearer on this side of the valence, you can be able to better understand, like, okay, what are my strengths? What can I do to leverage here? And
What are the possibilities?
what are the possibilities, right? So actually, I love that. So maybe, so if we're taking this thing, where would you put the like spiritual feeling spiritual feeling, yeah, like that feeling in touch with like your values, feeling spirit, yeah, I think like feeling spiritual, where would you put that on here, Pam?
I think I like that, like calmness of at the 0,
Mm-hmm.
or yeah, but then but in the positive area of pleasant, like 4 maybe.
Oh, right. So it's at 0 in terms of energy, but 4 on the pleasant.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
yeah, and so because it's on the pleasant side, very high on the pleasant side, your clarity, mental clarity is improved or
is
enhanced.
improved. Yeah, and that sometimes when I'm high energy, it's a state of kind of almost like I'm not that clear, because there's a lot of I don't know, it's just
Like
it's a vibration, or it's like a frequency that God can't get to, because I'm so busy and excited and stuff. But if
everyone's doing backflips in your head.
exactly, yeah. I don't mean to be taking up so much time here, but
I think it's a great discussion though, right? So
uh-huh.
I mean, at what point, right? I think that's a really great addition to this kind of thing, is like, yeah, you can see where your emotions are based on low energy or high energy, pleasant versus unpleasant, but then where are the sweet spots, right, of your emotions? Because if those are your sweet spots, if you're not in your sweet spots, what do you need to change to get your emotions in that sweet spot, right?
Yeah, this is so perfect. Thank you, Daniel. And I think each person has to find what's their best place,
Yeah.
and in having this conversation, it's bringing me right back to remember that, taking time for morning meditation and reviewing my goals and reviewing my self-talk, and then again going back into meditation to keep me in that calm, loving space is so important before I even move forward with the day. So thank you.
It's so important, right? Like, where
You.
are the emotional sweet spots, right? So important, right? Because then if you're not in your sweet spot, right, and like the sweet spots, it could be plural, like maybe when I'm at work, here is the sweet spot. When I'm at home, here is the sweet spot. When I am with my friends, it's maybe somewhere here in the sweet spot, right? And so when I'm outside of those sweet spots, in those contexts or in those settings, what do I need to do to get myself in those areas?
Yeah.
Right. So I can better prepare myself for the day. Love that. I love that. That's great. That's fantastic. Right. And really, because then it quantifies it a little bit, and it makes a visual of like, well, where am I and where do I want to go? Right. Love that.
What do I need? And what do I need to provide myself with in order to get there?
Ooh, love that question, right? Because it takes the self-determination, it takes the self-sufficiency, it puts that locus of control back on us, right? That's where the control should be, is with us, right? So what do I need to do to put myself in the situation where I am what I need?
Yeah. That's so
Love,
beautiful. Mhm.
love that. Love that. And so kind of in service to that discussion, we have here the full emotional cycle. It's blank, but it's got some strategies in here, right? So like we talk about strategies. So let's say my trigger is that lady in front of in front of the pancake box that won't move, right? So I've identified it, like she's kind of being a jerk, and so now I can avoid her altogether. I can prepare for her by just waiting patiently, and then I can seek out the desirable, right? Like maybe I can look for waffle mix instead, right? So some other things. And so these are the different thoughts and behaviors. So all of the different things that we just talked about, here is the download link for you to kind of fill this in for yourself, and then also kind of help you with some strategies to help you give yourself the things that you need to be the person that you need for yourself in that moment. Man, that's perfect. That is perfect. And so before we move back to the examples, right, I just wanted to make sure we close this for the recording here, is we talked about last week the difference between post-concussive symptoms versus persisting symptoms after concussion, right? So in terms of symptoms that are following concussion, these typically improve within a month or so, right? Maybe even 3 months for those persisting symptoms. And so following that period, or really just another way of reframing, cognitive reframing, is there, instead of appending the attribution to the concussion, start thinking about, well, these symptoms that are persisting after, you could say concussion, you could say stroke, TIA, brain injury, all kinds of different conditions, right? Infections, encephalitis, meningitis, right? All kinds of brain injury, but really the persisting symptoms after brain injury, right? Anne was talking about a great point with this, is after her brain injury, what seems to be persisting for long is headaches, head pain. And so now we're taking a look at, well, are there things that are directly related, like maybe upper cervical neck pain, maybe you have a cervicogenic headache, right? And then it radiates down to your shoulders. Maybe there's something that maybe an occipital nerve block might be helpful for, depending on the health of the neck. And then we took a look at, is it just on one side of the head? Is it migraine type? Is it like a million rubber bands wrapped around your head, right? And there are a variety of other, interventions that could be done with an informed physician. And so, take those recommendations from the Department of Defense over to your primary care physician, and keep us updated on your progress, right? And so here, persisting symptoms after concussion are characterized by those that are not improving or even worsening, right? Persisting symptoms that may be related to, premorbid, comorbid, or other resulting factors of the injury, right? After the injury, this is not to say that your symptoms are not related to the brain injury. Like, we're just saying that because of the brain injury, even though the symptoms may not be directly related, you would not be on this path if it were not for this traumatic event, right? Now, the symptoms may not be directly related to an active brain injury process, which is a good thing. No one really wants an active brain injury process happening. Like, I for sure definitely don't want that, right? there are some damage to my brain and things like that, but thank God it's not growing, right? It's the same size and it's unchanged for the last 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, right? So perfect. I want, if anything, I definitely want my persisting symptoms to not be related to an active brain injury process, right? That's something I definitely do not want, right? There may be other things like the event caused neck pain and a bulge in my cervical spine, right? That is constantly putting pressure that is radiating up to my head. Or maybe I have post-traumatic stress related to heights. And now every time I'm even remotely close, I start decompensating, right? And or maybe I have all this psychological pain and trauma and emotional disturbance from something that happened from the brain injury that has evolved into a strong mood disturbance, a frequent mood disturbance. And the way that I cope, because that's just how my dad always coped, was I I started drinking. I mean, that's what my dad did. That's what my grandma did, right? Maybe. And so these are all factors that are related to your coping that then exacerbate the problems that come from the traumatic event, right? So here we're looking at, yes, there may be other things that are important to support that are in your environment and that may not be per se directly connected to the brain injury process per se, right? Which is a good thing, right? No one wants an active brain injury process. What we are trying to support, and that's what we're doing here in Washington, D.C. this week, is we're advocating for legislative change in 4 areas. We're asking our congressmen to become part of the TBI action collab, or the congressional TBI action group. Then second, we're asking them to support and ensure the passage of the TBI Reauthorization Act, which has not been, it's been in the suspension file since 2024. Third is we are asking for legislators and congressmen and women to support the National Brain Injury Action Plan, which is going to be supporting the supports in the environment that support and empower the person, right? Fourth, we're asking for improved or enhanced funding to 3 federal entities. One is NIDLR, and they are the 17 TBI model system sites over 16 states, which are mostly on the East Coast. The second is the CDC, which houses the Heads Up Initiative, concussion guidelines, injury at work guidelines, and also the National Concussion Surveillance Study, which is now in its 3rd year. And then the third entity is the ACL, or the Administration of Community Living. And the ACL administers a state partnership program grant. And so there are about 30 plus states that are part of this grant. California is one, and we use that grant to support Cat B. And so Cat B are 12 sites across this great state of ours in California. That is St. Jude's is one, Jody House is another one, right? And Mercy Dignity Health is another one, and there are 12 sites in our state. And so those 4 initiatives and those 3 federal entities are the congressional legislative priority items that we are advocating for on Capitol Hill this week. And so just wanting to then put in a plug for that. Well wishes to the brain injury community, right? As we consult with multidisciplinary professionals across medical professions therapy professions, mental health professions, and social services, housing, all of the above, to really move forward in service toward promoting the overall health and well-being of survivors of traumatic brain injury or brain injury in general all over our country and their families. And so wish us well.
If I wanted to write a letter to my legislators, would I say, I encourage, or I'm asking for your support for National Brain Injury Action Plan and improved funding for the CDC and heads up guideline and for the administration of community living? Is that how I would?
Yes. And so, yeah, so that's perfect. So I'm writing my congressman. I'm asking for support in 4 areas. One is to join the Congressional TBI Action Collaborative.
Okay.
Support the TBI Reauthorization Act. 3 would be to support the brain injury, the National Brain Injury Action Plan, and increase brain injury funding to those 3 those 3 federal funders.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. And so perfect. And so as lastly, I'll stop the recording here, and then we'll go over some of the cycles that people have with one another. So best regards, and I'll see you all next week. Okay, so perfect. So let me stop the recording. Okay.